What if Qui-Gon saved Anakin on Mustafar? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. One moment. One impossible intervention. One dead Jedi Master, appearing when the galaxy needed him most. This is the moment that changes everything. Qui-Gon Jinn died on Naboo. We all saw it happen. Darth Maul's lightsaber pierced his heart. Obi-Wan held him as he died. But what if death wasn't the end for the maverick Jedi Master? What if he found a way to return at the exact moment when his greatest failure could be transformed into the galaxy's salvation? Picture this. Anakin Skywalker is about to make his fatal leap on Mustafar. The jump that will cost him his limbs, his humanity, and seal his transformation into Darth Vader. Obi-Wan's lightsaber is raised for the strike that will haunt him forever. The galaxy's fate hangs on this single moment of pride and desperation. But then the impossible happens. A figure materializes from the Force itself, stepping between master and apprentice, just as their tragedy reaches its climax. The volcanic hellscape of Mustafar stretches endlessly beneath twin suns, rivers of molten lava carving through blackened rock like veins of liquid fire. The air itself seems to burn, thick with sulfur and ash that would choke any ordinary being. But the two figures locked in combat on the narrow metal platform are far from ordinary. They are legends made flesh, their destinies intertwined. Since a 9-year-old boy first stepped into a Jedi's life on a distant desert world, Anakin Skywalker, once the hero of the Republic, now consumed by darkness as Darth Vader, moves with lethal precision. His lightsaber, burning crimson in the hellish light, cuts through the superheated air with deadly intent. Each strike carries the weight of his fall, the momentum of his rage, the crushing burden of his perceived betrayals. His mechanical breathing, a result of his recent injuries, creates an ominous rhythm that punctuates the clash of plasma blades. "You underestimate my power," Anakin snarls, his voice distorted by both fury and the respiratory apparatus that keeps him alive. His yellow Sith eyes burn with an intensity that rivals the lava flows below. The boy who once dreamed of freeing slaves and bringing peace to the galaxy has been replaced by something far more terrible, a weapon of destruction shaped by manipulation and loss. Across from him, Obi-Wan Kenobi fights not just for his life, but for his very soul. Every parry, every defensive maneuver tears at his heart like a physical wound. This is not some distant enemy he faces, but the boy he raised, the young man he trained, the closest thing to a son he ever had. The Jedi Master's blue blade moves with desperate precision, not seeking to kill, but somehow hoping against hope to reach whatever remains of Anakin Skywalker beneath the mask of Darth Vader. "Don't try it, Anakin. I have the high ground. It's over." The words echo across the volcanic landscape, carried by winds that reek of brimstone and death. Obi-Wan stands on a raised platform of black metal, his robe singed and torn, his face streaked with soot and tears. He refuses to acknowledge. He knows what comes next. He has seen it in his meditations, felt it in the Force like a crushing weight on his chest. His apprentice will leap, driven by pride and rage, and Obi-Wan will be forced to make a choice that will haunt him for the rest of his days. "You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you." The anguish in those words seems to give Anakin pause for just a moment. His lightsaber wavers, and something flickers behind his eyes. some ghost of the man he used to be. But the darkness is too strong, Palpatine's conditioning too complete. The hatred surges back, drowning out any trace of love or brotherhood. "I hate you," Anakin screams, his voice breaking with emotional and physical pain. He launches himself into the air, lightsaber raised in a killing blow that will either destroy his former master or lead to his own doom. The Force flows around him, but it is corrupted by his rage, twisted by his suffering, into something that serves only destruction. Time seems to slow as Obi-Wan raises his blade, knowing that in seconds he will be forced to maim the person he loves most in the galaxy. The choice tears at him like a living thing. Let Anakin strike him down, and the galaxy will remain under Palpatine's control. Strike down Anakin, and a piece of his own soul dies with him. But just as the two lightsabers are about to meet in a clash that will define the fate of the galaxy, the air itself seems to shift. The oppressive heat of Mustafar suddenly feels cool by comparison, as power unlike anything either combatant has felt before manifests between them. The Force, which has been twisted and corrupted by years of war and manipulation, suddenly flows pure and clean. A figure materializes out of nothing, standing impossibly on thin air, as if the very lava flows have risen to support him. He is tall and dignified, his hair long and graying, his beard neatly trimmed, despite the ethereal nature of his presence. Most striking of all are his eyes, filled with a wisdom and compassion that seem to illuminate the darkness around them. He wears the robes of a Jedi, but they glow with inner light, marking him as something beyond the mortal realm. "Anakin, stop. There is another way." The voice carries across the hellscape with perfect clarity, cutting through the roar of lava and the hiss of superheated gas. Both combatants freeze in mid-motion, their lightsabers still ignited, but no longer moving toward their deadly conclusion. The presence of this figure changes everything, altering the very nature of this confrontation, from a duel to the death, into something else entirely. Qui-Gon Jinn stands between master and apprentice, between light and dark, between hope and despair. His Force ghost has never appeared this solid before, never manifested with such power. The effort it takes to maintain this form is enormous, drawing on reserves of spiritual strength he has built over years of communion with the living Force. But this moment, this single point in time, justifies any cost. "Master?" Obi-Wan's voice is barely a whisper, filled with shock and desperate hope. His lightsaber trembles in his grip as he stares at the man who trained him, who died in his arms on Naboo, who set all of these events in motion by discovering a slave boy on Tatooine. How is this possible? Qui-Gon's expression is both infinitely sad and utterly determined as he looks between his former Padawan and the young man he was meant to train. "The Force brought me here because this moment will determine the fate of the galaxy. I have been watching from beyond the veil, seeing the threads of destiny weave themselves into this terrible tapestry. But destiny is not fixed, young ones. It can be changed, but only if we have the courage to make different choices." Anakin staggers backward, his yellow eyes wide with shock and something that might be hope. The rage that has consumed him wavers as he looks into the face of the one man who truly believed in him from the beginning. "You're dead," I saw you die on Naboo. I felt your passing in the Force. Death is merely another state of being for those who serve the living Force. Qui-Gon replies, his voice carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom. I have been learning, growing, understanding truths that the Jedi Order never taught us. The boundary between life and death is not as absolute as we believed, and sometimes, when the need is great enough, that boundary can be crossed. The ghost moves closer to Anakin, and despite the hellish heat of Mustafar, the air around him seems cool and peaceful. His presence radiates the same calm wisdom that once made a 9-year-old slave boy feel safe and loved for perhaps the first time in his young life. That same energy now reaches out to the broken man that boy has become. I failed you, Anakin. The words carry a weight of regret that spans years. I should have been there to guide you, to help you understand your gifts and your burdens. I should have seen the danger that Palpatine represented. I should have prepared you for the trials you would face. But failure is not the end of the story unless we choose to make it so. The yellow slowly begins to fade from Anakin's eyes as Qui-Gon speaks, replaced by glimpses of the blue they once were. The conflict rages within him, years of manipulation and conditioning warring against the pure presence of the man who saw good in him when no one else would. It is too late. I've done terrible things. I killed the younglings in the temple. I helped Palpatine destroy the Republic. I turned against everything I once believed in. Qui-Gon's expression becomes even more compassionate as he hears the anguish in Anakin's voice. Yes, you have done terrible things, but terrible actions do not make you a terrible person, young one. They make you a person who has made terrible choices, and choices can be unmade. Paths can be changed. Redemption can be found even in the darkest places. But Padme, she's dying because of me. I strangled her with my own hands. The visions showed me her death, and I caused it, trying to prevent it. Here, Qui-Gon's eyes flash with something approaching anger, though it is directed not at Anakin but at the one who manipulated him so skillfully. She doesn't have to die. But first, you must see the truth about what has been done to you. You must understand how thoroughly you have been deceived. The Force Ghost extends his consciousness outward, and suddenly the air around them shimmers with power. Images begin to form in the superheated atmosphere, visions more clear and detailed than any hologram. Obi-Wan gasps as he sees them, finally understanding the true scope of the trap that has been closing around them all for over a decade. They see a young senator from Naboo, ambitious and calculating, orchestrating the Trade Federation's blockade of his own homeworld. The invasion that brought Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to Naboo, the crisis that led to Palpatine's rise to power, was not a political miscalculation or corporate greed run amok. It was the first move in a game that would span decades. The visions shift and change, showing them moment after moment of careful manipulation. They see Palpatine meeting with Count Dooku on Coruscant, planning the separatist movement that would tear the Republic apart. They watch as he plays both sides of the Clone Wars like pieces on a vast Dejaric board, funding armies on both sides while positioning himself as the only solution to the chaos he himself created. No, that's impossible. Anakin's voice is weak, hollow. The Chancellor saved the Republic. He's been my mentor, my friend. He's trying to bring order to a chaotic galaxy. Look deeper, Anakin. See what he truly is. The visions become darker, more personal. They see Palpatine as Darth Sidious, his true face revealed in the shadows of his private chambers. They watch him manipulating young Anakin from their very first meeting, feeding him doubts about the Jedi, encouraging his attachments while simultaneously making him feel guilty about them. They see him orchestrating situations designed to make Anakin choose between his loyalty to the Jedi and his love for Padme. Most devastating of all, they see the truth about Anakin's visions of Padme's death. They were not warnings sent by the Force, but cruel phantoms planted in his mind by Sith sorcery. Palpatine had spent months seeding Anakin's dreams with images of Padme dying in childbirth, conditioning him to believe that only the dark side could prevent this tragedy. The revelation hits Anakin like a physical blow. His lightsaber deactivates as he falls to his knees on the volcanic platform, his mechanical breathing becoming ragged and irregular. Everything I've done, it was all part of his plan. The younglings, the Jedi Temple, turning against you, Obi-Wan. He wanted this to happen. Yes, young one. He used your compassion against you, twisted your love for Padme into a chain that bound you to his will. He saw your potential from the moment Qui-Gon brought you to the temple, and he began planning how to corrupt that potential for his own purposes. Obi-Wan deactivates his own lightsaber, his face wet with tears as he sees his apprentice's anguish. The weight of understanding crushes down on him as he realizes how blind they all were. Anakin, I'm so sorry. We should have seen what was happening to you. We should have protected you from him. We all failed him, Qui-Gon says sadly, his ghostly form seeming to solidify even more as his emotional connection to the moment grows stronger. The Jedi Order became too rigid, too afraid of emotion, to see that Anakin needed guidance, not restrictions. We treated him like a potential threat, instead of a young man struggling to understand his place in the galaxy. How can I come back from this? Anakin's voice breaks as he speaks. How can I face what I've done? How can I live with the knowledge that I murdered children, that I helped destroy everything I once swore to protect? By choosing to do what is right, even when it seems impossible. Qui-Gon kneels beside the broken Sith Lord, his presence radiating warmth and acceptance. By understanding that redemption is not about erasing the past, but about creating a better future. By remembering that you are not defined by your worst moments, but by what you choose to do next. Anakin looks up at his two masters, the weight of his crimes still pressing down on his shoulders like a physical burden. But for the first time since his fall, he also feels something else: hope. It is a fragile thing, barely a spark in the darkness, but it is real. Padme is dying as we speak, giving birth to your children. But her death is not inevitable. Despite what your visions showed you, the Force flows through you more strongly than through any Jedi who has ever lived. You can save her, Anakin, but only if you embrace the light within yourself. My children, the words seem to give Anakin strength, reminding him that there is still something pure in his life, something worth fighting for. Twins, a son and a daughter. They will be powerful in the Force, more so than either you or their mother. But they need their father, Anakin Skywalker, not the broken shell that Darth Vader has become. The young man who was briefly Darth Vader looks down at his mechanical hand. then at the yellow eyes reflected in his lightsaber's polished metal. He can feel the darkness still within him, a cold presence that whispers of power and revenge. Can the light really overcome what I've become? Can I truly find my way back after falling so far? Qui-Gon smiles, the expression filled with the same warmth he showed to a 9-year-old boy in a junk shop on Tatooine so many years ago. The Force is not simply about light and dark, young one. Those are human concepts, attempts to categorize something far more complex and beautiful than our minds can fully comprehend. The Force is about balance, about harmony between seemingly opposing elements. You have touched the darkness, yes, and it has left its mark on you, but you have not been consumed by it, despite what you believe. Your love for Padme, your friendship with Obi-Wan, your desire to protect the innocent. These feelings still exist within you, buried but not destroyed. They are the seeds from which your redemption can grow. Then we have to go to her. Now, before it's too late, the three figures board Padme's ship, which sits abandoned on the landing platform where she brought it in her desperate attempt to reach Anakin. The elegant Naboo cruiser shows signs of hasty departure. Its systems still running, but its passenger compartments empty, except for the protocol droid C-3PO, who has been waiting in growing distress for his mistress to return. Oh my, Master Anakin, I am so relieved to see you. Mistress Padme has been taken to a medical facility, and I fear for her condition. She was most distressed when she left, speaking of terrible things and clutching her abdomen in pain. As they race through hyperspace toward Polis Massa, Qui-Gon continues to work with Anakin, helping him understand the true nature of the Force and his connection to it. The journey gives them time to talk, to heal, to begin the long process of rebuilding what was broken. The Jedi taught you to suppress your emotions, to view them as paths to the dark side. But emotion is not the enemy, Anakin. It is the intensity of feeling that gives the Force its true power. Love, joy, even righteous anger. These can serve the light as surely as hatred serves the dark. The key is not suppression, but understanding. But the younglings, how can I ever forgive myself for what I did to them? Forgiveness is not something you give to yourself, young one. It is something you earn through your actions, through dedicating your life to protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The children you killed cannot be brought back, but other children can be saved by what you do from this moment forward. Obi-Wan listens to his former master's teachings, and for the first time in years, he begins to understand where the Jedi Order went wrong. They feared Anakin's power instead of helping him master it. They demanded he abandon his attachments instead of teaching him how to love without possessiveness, how to care without controlling. What about the prophecy, Master? What about bringing balance to the Force? Qui-Gon's expression becomes thoughtful as he considers the ancient words that have shaped so much of their understanding. Balance does not mean the destruction of one side or the other, as the Jedi believed. It does not mean achieving some perfect equilibrium where light and dark cancel each other out. True balance is dynamic, ever-changing, like a dancer who maintains grace through constant subtle adjustments. The Jedi became too focused on suppression and control, while the Sith embraced chaos and domination. Both approaches are flawed because they deny fundamental aspects of the Force's nature. Balance lies in acceptance and understanding, in working with the Force rather than trying to impose our will upon it. When they arrive at the medical facility on Polis Massa, they find it in chaos. Medical droids and organic personnel rush through sterile corridors, their usual calm efficiency disrupted by the unusual nature of their patient's condition. Padme Amidala lies in the facility's most advanced medical suite, surrounded by sophisticated equipment that monitors every aspect of her failing life signs. Her condition has the medical staff baffled. Physically, she should be fine. The pregnancy is proceeding normally. Both children are healthy, and there are no complications that should threaten her life. Yet her vital signs continue to weaken, as if some invisible force is draining away her will to live. She's dying of a broken heart. One of the medical droids explains to the three men as they arrive. Her life force is fading for reasons we cannot understand or treat. The children appear to be healthy, but if we cannot stabilize the mother soon, we may lose all three of them. Anakin rushes to Padme's bedside, taking her hand in his. The touch of her skin against his sends a shock through his system, and he can immediately sense what the medical equipment cannot detect. Her life force is indeed fading, not because of any physical ailment, but because her spirit has been crushed by the apparent loss of the man she loves. The touch also reveals something else. Padme is not dying because of what Anakin did to her on Mustafar. The forced chokehold he applied in his rage was brief and not truly life-threatening. She is dying because she believes he is lost to her forever, consumed by darkness and hatred. Her broken heart is literally killing her, just as his visions predicted. I'm here, Padme. I'm here, and I'm not leaving you again. Her eyes flutter open, and even in her weakened state, she recoils slightly at the sight of his scarred face and the mechanical apparatus that helps him breathe. But more disturbing are his eyes, still tinged with the yellow of the dark side, despite his redemption. Anakin, what have you done? What have you become? I've made terrible mistakes, Padme. I let fear and anger control me, and I nearly lost everything that mattered. But I'm going to make it right. I promise you, I'm going to find my way back. Qui-Gon places his ghostly hand on Anakin's shoulder, and even though the touch is incorporeal, Anakin can feel strength flowing from his would-be master. Reach out through the Force, young one. Feel the life within her, the children she carries. Let your love flow through you, not as possession or desperation, but as pure giving. Anakin closes his eyes and extends his senses as Qui-Gon has taught him. He can feel Padme's heartbeat, weak and irregular. He can sense the twins within her womb, strong and healthy, but somehow affected by their mother's fading life force. Most importantly, he can feel the connection between them all, the web of love and destiny that binds their family together. Drawing on Qui-Gon's guidance, Anakin begins to channel the Force in a way he has never attempted before. Instead of trying to dominate or control the situation, he simply gives. He pours his own life energy into Padme, sharing his strength without trying to take anything in return. It is the opposite of everything Palpatine taught him about power. The effort is exhausting, requiring him to surrender his ego and his need to control outcomes. But as he works, something miraculous begins to happen. The yellow slowly fades from his eyes, replaced by their natural blue. His face, scarred and twisted by rage and the fires of Mustafar, begins to soften as the darkness recedes from his features. More importantly, Padme's breathing begins to deepen and strengthen. Color returns to her cheeks as her life force stabilizes and begins to grow stronger. The medical monitors show her vital signs improving steadily as the mysterious condition that was killing her finally begins to retreat. Anakin. Her voice is stronger now, filled with wonder as she looks at him with clear eyes. You're different. Something has changed. I'm sorry, Padme. I'm so sorry for everything I've done. I let my fear consume me, and I almost lost you, lost myself, lost everything. But I'm going to be better now. I'm going to be the man you believed I could be. The labor begins naturally after that, with Padme strong enough to participate fully in bringing her children into the world. The birth is difficult but not dangerous, and Anakin is there beside her through every moment, lending his strength and love to support her through the process. Luke Skywalker enters the world first, his cries strong and clear as he takes his first breath of recycled station air. He is perfect in every way, with his father's strong features and his mother's determined spirit already evident, even in infancy. His Force presence is immediately apparent to those sensitive to it, bright and pure, and filled with potential. His sister Leia follows moments later, equally healthy and vocal in her complaints about being disturbed from her comfortable womb. She is smaller than her brother, but no less strong, and her Force signature carries a different quality, more focused and intense, where Luke's is broad and encompassing. As Anakin holds his children for the first time, the last traces of Darth Vader fade away entirely. The mechanical breathing that has plagued him since his injuries on Mustafar returns to normal as his lungs heal through the Force. The darkness that clouded his judgment lifts like morning mist, leaving him clear-eyed and whole for the first time in months. They're beautiful, Padme whispers, tears of joy streaming down her face as she watches her husband cradle their children. They're perfect, both of them. They are? Anakin agrees, his voice breaking with emotion. And they're going to grow up free, in a galaxy where they don't have to hide what they are or be afraid of their gifts. I promise you that. Obi-Wan watches the reunion with mixed emotions, joy at seeing his former apprentice restored and witnessing the birth of these powerful new lives, but also worry about what comes next. The Emperor will not simply accept Anakin's return to the light. Palpatine will hunt them across the galaxy if necessary to reclaim his prize apprentice or destroy him to prevent him from becoming a threat. What do we do now? The Empire will be looking for us. All of us. Palpatine knows that Anakin has children, and he'll want to either corrupt them or eliminate them before they can grow strong enough to challenge him. Qui-Gon, who has remained silent during the birth, allowing the family their moment of joy, finally speaks. His form has begun to fade slightly, the effort of maintaining such a solid manifestation taking its toll even on his enhanced spiritual state. Now we prepare for the real battle. Palpatine has revealed himself, and the galaxy groans under the weight of his tyranny. The Jedi Order may be scattered, but it is not destroyed. There are others who survived the purge, others who remember what the Republic was meant to be. But I can't just return to the Jedi Order. Not after what I've done. They would never trust me again, and they would be right not to. Nor should you try to return to what was, Anakin. The Force is calling you to a different path, one that the old Jedi Order never understood. The code that governed the Jedi for 1,000 generations failed you because it demanded perfection without offering understanding, control without wisdom. You must forge a new way, one that acknowledges both the light and dark aspects of the Force, while choosing to serve life and growth over death and stagnation. You must become something the galaxy has never seen before. A guardian who understands the full spectrum of the Force and can help others find balance within themselves. Over the following days, as Padme recovers from childbirth and the family begins to plan their future, Qui-Gon shares his vision of what Anakin can become. Not a traditional Jedi bound by rigid rules and ancient dogma, but something new and necessary for the changing galaxy. The old Jedi Order fell because it became too insular, too focused on maintaining the status quo rather than serving the greater good. They forgot that the Force flows through all life, not just those strong enough to manipulate it consciously. A new generation of Force users must arise, one that includes rather than excludes, that teaches balance rather than suppression. During these conversations, the twins grow with unusual speed, their Force sensitivity apparent even in their first week of life. Luke reaches for his father's lightsaber with tiny hands that seem to know instinctively what the weapon represents. Leia appears to sense the emotions of everyone around her, responding with coos and gurgles to their feelings rather than their words. Unlike the canonical timeline, where they would be separated and hidden away for their own protection, Luke and Leia remain together with both parents. They are raised with full knowledge of their heritage and their potential, but also with the wisdom to understand the responsibilities that come with great power. Anakin begins training again, but under Qui-Gon's guidance rather than the strictures of the old Jedi Order. He learns to acknowledge his emotions without being controlled by them, to use his attachments as sources of strength rather than weakness. Most importantly, he learns to forgive himself for his past while still taking full responsibility for his actions. The first lesson is the hardest, accepting that he cannot undo what he has done. The younglings he killed will not return to life. The Jedi he betrayed will not forget his actions. The Republic he helped destroy cannot be restored unchanged. But accepting these truths does not mean despairing over them. It means dedicating his life to ensuring that such tragedies never happen again. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan works to contact other survivors of Order 66. Using coded Jedi frequencies and old contacts throughout the galaxy, he begins to reach out to those who escaped Palpatine's purge. The response is cautious at first, many Jedi believing this is a trap designed to draw them out of hiding. But when word spreads that Anakin Skywalker has returned to the light, that the Chosen One has fulfilled his destiny, not through destruction but through redemption, hope begins to bloom in corners of the galaxy where it has been absent for months. Yoda, in his exile on Dagobah, is among the first to sense the shift in the Force. The ancient Jedi Master has spent his time in exile meditating on the failures that led to the Order's downfall, and he recognizes the significance of what has occurred. Through their connection in the Force, he reaches out to Obi-Wan with a message of cautious optimism. Felt it, I have. The great change in young Skywalker. Possible it seemed not, but surprise us. The Force always does. A new hope has arisen, but careful we must be. Dangerous still is the Emperor, and patience we must have. Other Jedi begin to cautiously emerge from hiding as well. Shakti, who survived the massacre at the Jedi Temple by being off-world during Order 66, makes contact through intermediaries. Quinlan Vos, master of disguise and undercover operations, reveals that he has been working to build a resistance network. Even Ahsoka Tano, who left the Jedi Order before its fall, sends word that she is willing to help if the cause is just. The family cannot remain on Polis Massa forever. The medical facility is too exposed, too well known to Imperial intelligence. They need a secure base of operations where they can plan their next moves and begin building something new from the ashes of the old order. Qui-Gon suggests Yavin 4, the jungle moon with its ancient Massassi temples. The site has a powerful connection to the Force and is remote enough to escape immediate Imperial attention. More importantly, it has historical significance as a place where the light side has triumphed over darkness before. The temples were built by an enslaved species to honor their Sith masters. But in the end, they became monuments to the Sith's downfall. It is fitting that they should become the birthplace of a new understanding of the Force, one that learns from the mistakes of both Jedi and Sith. The relocation to Yavin 4 takes place in secret, with Obi-Wan using his network of contacts to secure passage and supplies. The jungle moon proves to be an ideal sanctuary, its dense vegetation and ancient ruins providing natural camouflage, while the strong Force presence helps mask their activities from Imperial sensors. The Great Temple becomes their primary base. Its massive stone chambers converted into living quarters, training halls, and workshops. The ancient carvings that cover its walls seem to respond to the presence of so many Force users, sometimes glowing faintly in the darkness, as if awakening from millennia of slumber. Anakin spends hours studying these carvings with Qui-Gon's guidance, learning about the Massassi and their complicated relationship with both Sith and Jedi throughout history. The enslaved builders left subtle messages in their work, expressions of hope and resistance that speak across the centuries to those wise enough to understand them. The twins thrive in this environment, their young minds absorbing not just Force techniques, but also the rich history embedded in every stone. Luke shows an early fascination with the mechanical aspects of the temple's construction, often found with a small toolkit, attempting to understand how the ancient builders achieved such precise stonework without modern technology. Leia, meanwhile, demonstrates an intuitive understanding of the carving's deeper meanings, often pointing out details that even adult scholars miss. Her empathic abilities allow her to sense the emotions of those long-dead artisans, feeling their pain, their hope, and their determination to leave something beautiful behind, despite their enslavement. The first students to arrive are not traditional Jedi candidates. They include former clone troopers who managed to resist or remove their control chips, civilian Force sensitives who escaped the Imperial purges, and even some former Imperial officers who became disillusioned with the Empire's brutality. Captain Rex arrives early in their settlement. Having finally located his general after months of searching, the veteran clone trooper brings with him a squad of loyal men who chose to follow him into exile rather than serve the Empire. Their military experience proves invaluable in establishing the settlement's defenses and training protocols. Commander Cody follows several weeks later, his arrival causing significant tension given his role in Order 66. The meeting between him and Obi-Wan is painful for both men, filled with recriminations and guilt that have festered for years. But gradually, with Anakin's help as mediator, they begin to work through their shared trauma. "I never wanted to betray you, General. The chip, it made me do things, think things that weren't really me. I've lived with that guilt every day since." "I know, Cody. We all failed each other in those dark days. But we have a chance now to build something better, something that honors the memory of those we lost. The clone officers bring with them detailed intelligence about Imperial operations and troop movements. More importantly, they provide testimony about the inhibitor chips and their role in Order 66, evidence that helps other Jedi survivors understand that their clone allies were victims rather than willing betrayers. Among the civilian refugees is a young Twi'lek girl named Numa, whose village was destroyed by Imperial forces. She arrives barely alive, her Force abilities having manifested during the trauma of watching her family die. Anakin takes personal responsibility for her care, seeing in her something of his own childhood pain. The girl's healing becomes a teaching moment for the entire community. Rather than simply suppressing her traumatic memories or trying to help her forget, they teach her to process her grief constructively. She learns to channel her pain into determination to protect others, her Force abilities growing stronger as she finds healthy ways to honor her lost family. Another significant arrival is Jocasta Nu, the former chief librarian of the Jedi Archives. The elderly Jedi managed to escape the temple during Order 66, with a portion of the Archive's most important holocrons and texts. Her knowledge becomes crucial in establishing proper training protocols and preserving Jedi history for future generations. But even Master Nu must adapt to the new philosophy being developed on Yavin 4. Her initial resistance to teaching emotional balance rather than suppression creates friction with Anakin, leading to several heated debates about the nature of Jedi training. The archives you seek to preserve represent 1,000 years of gradual decline, Master Nu. The rigidity that you defend as tradition was actually a slow poison that made us vulnerable to manipulation and corruption. You speak of tradition as if it were a disease, Skywalker. But without the wisdom of the past, how can we hope to avoid repeating our mistakes? We honor the past by learning from it, not by blindly repeating it. The younglings who died in the temple were following traditions that left them defenseless against the very darkness they were supposed to be prepared for. The debate continues for weeks, with other members of the community taking sides or trying to find middle ground. Eventually, they reach a compromise. The old knowledge will be preserved and studied, but new approaches will be developed alongside traditional methods. Anakin's teaching style becomes the heart of this new approach. Rather than demanding his students suppress their emotions, he teaches them to understand and channel those feelings constructively. Rather than forbidding attachments, he shows them how love and loyalty can be sources of strength when properly balanced with wisdom and selflessness. His first formal class includes 12 students ranging in age from 8 to 40, representing 6 different species and vastly different backgrounds. There's Kanan Jarrus, a young Padawan who escaped Order 66 but struggled with anger and survivor's guilt. Ezra Bridger, a street-smart teenager from Lothal with raw, natural talent but no formal training. Ahsoka Tano, who arrives unexpectedly after hearing rumors of Anakin's redemption. The reunion between master and former apprentice is emotional and complex. Ahsoka has spent years questioning everything she believed about the Jedi, her faith shattered by their betrayal during her trial. Seeing Anakin restored gives her hope, but also forces her to confront her own choices and the path she's taken since leaving the Order. You left because you saw what I couldn't, Snips. The Order was already falling, and you were wise enough to step away before it pulled you down with it. But I abandoned you, when you needed guidance most. If I had stayed, maybe I could have helped you see through Palpatine's lies. Maybe. Or maybe we both would have fallen together. The important thing is that we're here now, with a chance to build something better. Their renewed partnership becomes a cornerstone of the developing community. Ahsoka's experiences outside the Jedi Order bring valuable perspectives on how Force-sensitive beings can serve the greater good without being bound by rigid institutions. The training itself is revolutionary in its approach. Students are taught to meditate not by emptying their minds, but by fully experiencing and understanding their emotions. They learn to draw strength from their connections to others, rather than severing those bonds. Most importantly, they discover that the Force responds more readily to those who approach it with humility and service, rather than ambition and control. One exercise involves students working in pairs to understand each other's emotional states through the Force. Rather than judging negative emotions as dangerous, they learn to recognize them as information about the world around them. Fear can warn of genuine danger. Anger can signal injustice that needs to be addressed. Even hatred can be transformed into determination to prevent harm. The physical training is equally innovative. Students learn traditional lightsaber forms, but they also study unconventional weapons and tactics. They practice fighting in groups rather than as individuals, learning to coordinate their abilities and cover each other's weaknesses. Luke and Leia participate in these sessions despite their young age, their natural abilities allowing them to keep up with much older students. Their presence reminds everyone of the future they're building, the generation that will inherit whatever they create here. The boy shows remarkable aptitude for the technical aspects of Force use, often understanding the mechanics of a technique before he can properly execute it. He spends hours in the workshop areas, building training droids and modifying equipment under the guidance of various mentors. His sister demonstrates a different kind of brilliance, her empathic abilities making her naturally gifted at understanding the emotional dimensions of Force use. She often serves as an informal counselor to other students, her youth somehow making it easier for them to open up about their struggles. As months pass and the community grows, they begin to attract attention from Imperial intelligence. Probe droids are spotted in the outer system with increasing frequency, and communications intercepts suggest that the Empire is aware of unusual activity in the region. The threat becomes more immediate when a full Imperial task force arrives in the system, led by Moff Tarkin himself. The cold, calculating officer has been tasked with investigating reports of Jedi activity and has been given broad authority to use whatever methods necessary to eliminate the threat. The attack begins with a bombardment of the outer moons, designed to flush out any hidden bases or supply depots. When this fails to provoke a response, Tarkin orders landing parties deployed to the jungle moon itself, beginning a systematic search of the ancient temple complexes. The rebels are prepared for this possibility, having spent months developing contingency plans and escape routes. But they are not prepared for the sheer scale of the Imperial response. Tarkin has brought not just stormtroopers and AT-ATs, but also a team of Inquisitors, led by the Grand Inquisitor himself. The dark side users prove to be the most dangerous aspect of the Imperial assault. Unlike regular troops, they cannot be easily misdirected or confused by Force techniques. Their presence creates a psychic weight that presses down on all the Force-sensitive defenders, making it difficult to coordinate their abilities effectively. The battle for Yavin 4 becomes a running fight through the jungle, with small groups of rebels using their knowledge of the terrain to harass and delay the Imperial advance. But eventually, they are forced back to the Great Temple itself, where they make their final stand. Anakin leads the defense personally, his lightsaber blazing as he cuts through waves of stormtroopers. But he knows that conventional tactics will not be enough to defeat the Inquisitors. These are Force users trained specifically to hunt and kill Jedi, and they have been preparing for this confrontation for years. The Grand Inquisitor himself seeks out Anakin for single combat, believing that defeating the famous Jedi Knight will break the rebellion's morale. Their duel takes place in the temple's main chamber, surrounded by ancient carvings that seem to glow brighter as the two warriors clash. So, the great Anakin Skywalker has finally revealed himself. I have studied your techniques, your weaknesses. You cannot hide behind your precious balance forever. I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm embracing everything I am, everything the Force has taught me. That's something you'll never understand. The fight is brutal and fast-paced. The Grand Inquisitor's spinning lightsaber, creating a whirling wall of deadly energy. But Anakin has faced such weapons before as Darth Vader, and he knows their weaknesses as well as their strengths. More importantly, he fights not just for victory, but for the protection of his family and community. This gives his movements a purpose and focus that his opponent lacks. Where the Grand Inquisitor fights with technique and hatred, Anakin fights with love and determination. The duel reaches its climax when the Grand Inquisitor, frustrated by his inability to break through Anakin's defenses, resorts to Force lightning. The dark energy crackles through the ancient chamber, scorching the stone walls and filling the air with the smell of ozone. But Anakin does not simply deflect the attack as a traditional Jedi might. Instead, he absorbs it, channels it, and transforms it into something else entirely. The destructive energy becomes healing light that flows outward from him, strengthening his allies and disrupting the Inquisitor's connection to the dark side. The Grand Inquisitor staggers backward, his spinning weapon faltering as he struggles to understand what he has just witnessed. In that moment of confusion, Anakin strikes, not to kill but to disable. His lightsaber severs the Inquisitor's weapon hand, sending the exotic weapon clattering across the stone floor. Yield. You've lost, and continuing to fight will only cost more lives. But the Grand Inquisitor, faced with defeat and dishonor, makes a final desperate choice. Rather than surrender, he activates a thermal detonator concealed in his armor, intending to bring down the temple and everyone in it. Anakin reacts instantly, using the Force to contain the explosion within a protective barrier. The effort is enormous, requiring him to channel more power than he has ever attempted before. The barrier holds, but the strain leaves him unconscious and near death. The battle's aftermath sees the surviving Inquisitors retreat with the main Imperial force, having failed in their primary objective. But the cost has been high, with several members of the rebel community killed or wounded in the fighting. Anakin's condition becomes the focus of intense concern and effort. The explosion has left him in a coma-like state, his consciousness apparently lost in some deep realm of the Force. Padme maintains a constant vigil at his bedside, while the twins use their emerging abilities to try to reach their father's lost spirit. It is Qui-Gon who finally provides the key to Anakin's recovery. The Force Ghost explains that his former student has not been injured in any conventional sense, but has instead been forced to confront the deepest aspects of his own nature by the massive effort required to save the temple. He is reliving every choice he has ever made, understanding how each decision has shaped not just his own fate, but the destiny of the entire galaxy. This is a trial that cannot be rushed or aided by outside intervention. He must find his own way back. The vigil continues for weeks, with the community maintaining hope despite growing concerns. During this time, they must also deal with the practical consequences of the Imperial attack. Their location is now known to their enemies, making it impossible to remain on Yavin 4 indefinitely. Plans are made for evacuation and dispersal, but many refuse to leave while Anakin remains unconscious. His students argue that their master would never abandon them, and they will not abandon him. This loyalty creates a logistical challenge, but also demonstrates the strength of the bonds he has forged with those he teaches. When Anakin finally awakens, it is to find his family surrounding his bed and his community preparing to scatter to the winds. But he brings with him news that changes everything. During his spiritual journey, he has been in contact with other Force users throughout the galaxy, survivors of the Imperial purges who are ready to join their cause. More than that, he has gained a deeper understanding of the ancient prophecy about the Chosen One. The balance he is meant to bring to the Force is not a single act of redemption, but an ongoing process of healing and growth that will span generations. The evacuation of Yavin 4 becomes not a retreat, but an expansion. Small groups of rebels disperse to dozens of worlds, each carrying with them the knowledge and philosophy developed in the jungle temples. Like seeds scattered by the wind, they begin to take root in new soil. Some groups establish hidden academies on remote worlds, places where Force-sensitive children can learn without fear of persecution. Others integrate into existing rebellion cells, providing them with enhanced capabilities and a deeper understanding of their cause. A few even infiltrate Imperial institutions, working from within to undermine the system that has caused so much suffering. Anakin and his family take up residence on Alderaan, guests of Bail Organa, who has long been one of their most important allies. The peaceful world provides a stark contrast to the jungle wilderness of Yavin 4, but it also offers opportunities for political and diplomatic work that complement their military and spiritual efforts. Padme finds herself at the center of a growing political movement as planetary governments begin to openly question Imperial authority. Her reputation as a defender of democracy and her survival of Palpatine's regime make her a natural rallying point for those seeking alternatives to Imperial rule. The twins, now approaching their 10th birthday, adapt quickly to their new environment. Luke finds Alderaan's technological infrastructure fascinating. Spending hours with the planet's engineers and designers, learning about advanced manufacturing and engineering techniques, Leia gravitates toward the political side of their work, sitting in on diplomatic meetings and demonstrating an intuitive understanding of complex negotiations. Her ability to sense the true motivations and emotions of various participants makes her invaluable in identifying potential allies and detecting deception. But the relative peace of Alderaan also provides time for deeper training and development. Anakin begins work on a comprehensive guide to balanced Force use, documenting everything he has learned about integrating light and dark side techniques. This manuscript will eventually become the foundation for a new understanding of Force philosophy. The work is challenging, requiring him to articulate concepts that he understands intuitively but has never fully expressed in words. Qui-Gon's continued guidance proves essential, helping him find language for experiences that transcend normal human understanding. Other former Jedi contribute their own insights and experiences, creating a collaborative work that represents multiple perspectives and approaches. Master Yoda, still in exile on Dagobah, provides commentary through the Force, his ancient wisdom helping to contextualize new ideas within the framework of galactic history. The philosophical debates that emerge during this process are intense and sometimes contentious. Traditional Jedi like Master Nu argue for maintaining certain core principles, while reformed dark side users push for even more radical departures from established doctrine. These discussions take place not just on Alderaan, but across the growing network of hidden communities and academies. Communication crystals, based on ancient Jedi technology, but enhanced with new techniques, allow real-time conferences between groups, separated by hundreds of light years. One of the most significant debates centers on the question of emotional attachment. Traditional Jedi teaching held that attachment leads inevitably to the dark side, while Sith philosophy embraced passion and connection as sources of power. The new approach seeks to find a middle path that honors both perspectives. Attachment without wisdom becomes possessiveness, Anakin explains during one such conference. But wisdom without connection becomes coldness. True balance lies in loving deeply while accepting that all things must eventually change. This philosophy is put to the test when Imperial forces launch a renewed offensive against suspected rebel strongholds. Several of the hidden academies are discovered and attacked, resulting in casualties among both students and teachers. The loss of life creates a crisis of faith within the movement. Some argue that they should respond with overwhelming force, using their collective abilities to strike back at Imperial installations across the galaxy. Others maintain that such actions would make them no different from their enemies. Anakin finds himself at the center of these debates, his own history making him uniquely qualified to understand both perspectives. As someone who has walked the path of destructive vengeance, he can speak with authority about its ultimate futility. But as a father and teacher, he also understands the desire to protect those under his care. The solution that emerges is characteristically balanced. Rather than launching indiscriminate attacks, they begin a campaign of surgical strikes against specific Imperial targets. But these operations are conducted with strict rules of engagement designed to minimize civilian casualties and focus on military objectives that directly threaten innocent lives. Luke and Leia, despite their youth, are allowed to participate in the planning of these missions. Their unique perspective as children who have grown up during the Imperial era provides insights that adult strategists might miss. The boys' technical skills prove invaluable in developing new tools and tactics for the Resistance. His modifications to standard rebel equipment often make the difference between success and failure in dangerous operations. His sister's diplomatic abilities become equally important as the political aspects of their movement grow more complex. Her ability to understand and mediate between different factions helps prevent the kind of infighting that has historically plagued resistance movements. As the twins approach adolescence, they begin to demonstrate abilities that surpass even their father's considerable talents. But unlike Anakin's childhood, theirs is carefully guided and balanced. They learn not just techniques of power, but wisdom, compassion, and humility. Their training includes extensive study of galactic history, particularly the factors that led to the rise and fall of previous governments. They learn about the Clone Wars not just from their parents' perspective, but through careful examination of multiple sources and viewpoints. This education helps them understand that the current conflict is not simply about good versus evil, but about competing visions of how galactic society should be organized. The Empire represents order through control, while the rebellion advocates freedom through responsibility. The philosophical framework they develop during these years will eventually guide them as they take on leadership roles in the post-imperial galaxy. But for now, they are content to learn and grow under the guidance of their remarkable family. The turning point in the larger conflict comes when Emperor Palpatine himself finally decides to take direct action. Frustrated by the failure of his subordinates and increasingly concerned about the growing rebel alliance, he begins mobilizing the full resources of the Imperial war machine. The Emperor's personal involvement transforms the nature of the conflict. What had been a series of scattered uprisings becomes a full-scale galactic civil war, with entire star systems choosing sides and vast fleets clashing in space battles that dwarf anything seen since the Clone Wars. But Palpatine's greatest mistake is underestimating how much his enemies have grown and changed since their last encounter. The rebels he now faces are not the desperate fugitives who fled Coruscant years earlier, but a mature movement with clear goals, effective leadership, and the support of billions of beings across the galaxy. When the final confrontation comes, it takes place not in a throne room or on a battlefield, but in the realm of the Force itself. Palpatine, drawing on millennia of accumulated Sith knowledge and artifacts, attempts to corrupt the very foundations of reality. His goal is not merely to defeat his enemies, but to remake the galaxy in his own image. Anakin, supported by his family and the network of Force users they have trained, meets this challenge not with equal darkness, but with balanced light. The battle that follows transcends physical reality, taking place on a plane where thought and will are the primary weapons. The conflict draws in Force users from across the galaxy, each contributing their own strength and understanding to the struggle. Traditional Jedi, reformed Sith, civilian Force sensitives, and even beings who barely understand their abilities find themselves connected in a vast web of shared purpose. Luke and Leia, despite their youth, play crucial roles in this cosmic battle. Their pure connection to the Force, unmarked by decades of training in either Jedi or Sith traditions, allows them to bridge gaps between different approaches and philosophies. The Emperor's defeat, when it comes, is not the result of superior power or better tactics. It is the inevitable consequence of a fundamental truth that connection and cooperation are stronger than domination and control. Palpatine's vision of the galaxy as a hierarchy with himself at the apex crumbles when confronted by the reality of countless beings working together as equals. His death sends shockwaves through both the Force and the physical universe. But these are waves of liberation rather than destruction. The oppressive weight that has pressed down on the galaxy for decades suddenly lifts, replaced by a sense of possibility and hope that many have never experienced. The immediate aftermath is chaotic, as Imperial forces across the galaxy find themselves cut off from central authority. Some surrender immediately, others attempt to maintain local control, and a few try to establish their own small empires in the power vacuum. But the Rebel Alliance is prepared for this transition in ways that previous revolutionary movements were not. Years of careful planning and preparation have created alternative governmental structures ready to step in wherever imperial authority collapses. The new Galactic Constitution, drafted over years of careful debate and consultation, establishes a federal system that balances local autonomy with collective security. Rather than the centralized authority that allowed Palpatine to seize control, power is distributed among multiple levels of government with strong protections for individual rights. Padme becomes the first Chancellor of the New Republic, but she serves under strict term limits and with carefully defined powers. Her experience under both the Old Republic and the Empire has taught her the importance of preventing any one person from accumulating too much authority. The new government's approach to Force users is equally revolutionary. Rather than maintaining the Jedi as a separate quasi-religious order, Force-sensitive individuals are integrated into society as teachers, healers, and public servants. Their abilities are seen as gifts to be used for the common good, not sources of power to be hoarded or feared. This integration is not without challenges. Centuries of tradition and prejudice cannot be overcome overnight, and there are those on both sides who resist the changes. Some former Jedi struggle with the loss of their elite status, while some civilians fear being dominated by those with supernatural abilities. But the example set by the Skywalker family helps ease these transitions. Their visible commitment to service rather than power, their willingness to sacrifice personal comfort for the greater good, and their obvious love for each other and their community make them powerful symbols of what the new order can become. Luke and Leia, now in their late teens, embark on journeys of discovery that take them to distant corners of the galaxy. They seek out Force traditions that survived the Imperial purges, learning from diverse cultures and philosophies that enrich their understanding of the Force's true nature. Luke's travels take him to the planet Tython, where he studies with the Jedi, ancient Force users who practiced balance millennia before the Jedi Order was founded. Their teachings about the fundamental unity of light and dark side energies help him develop techniques that neither Jedi nor Sith ever imagined. Leia focuses on the political and social aspects of Force use, visiting worlds where Force-sensitive beings serve as mediators, healers, and community leaders. Her diplomatic skills and empathic abilities make her uniquely qualified to understand how different cultures integrate Force users into their social structures. These experiences prepare them for the roles they will eventually play in the new galactic order. Luke becomes a teacher and innovator, developing new approaches to Force education that can be adapted to different species and cultures. Leia evolves into a skilled diplomat and leader, eventually succeeding her mother as Chancellor, while also serving as a bridge between the political and Force-using communities. But perhaps the most important legacy of their journey is the simple example they provide. They demonstrate that it is possible to be powerful without being corrupted, to serve others without losing oneself, and to love deeply without becoming possessive. Years pass, and the galaxy gradually heals from the wounds inflicted by decades of war and oppression. The process is not always smooth or quick, but it is steady and sustainable. Each generation builds on the foundation laid by their predecessors, creating a civilization that is more just, more peaceful, and more inclusive than anything seen before. Anakin Skywalker, once the most feared enforcer of Imperial tyranny, lives to see his children's children playing safely in gardens that bloom where battlefields once raged. His redemption is complete, not because he has erased his past, but because he has used that past to build a better future. The scars remain, both physical and emotional. The mechanical parts of his body serve as permanent reminders of his time as Darth Vader, and the memories of what he did in service to the dark side will never fully fade. But these marks of his fall have become, paradoxically, sources of his greatest strength as a teacher and guide. When young Force users struggle with anger or fear, when they face temptation or despair, they can look to Anakin's example and know that redemption is possible. No one is beyond saving. No fall is too great to recover from. No darkness is so complete that light cannot shine through. In quiet moments, usually in the evening when the day's work is done, Anakin often sits with Padme and watches their grandchildren play. These are the moments that matter most, the simple joys that make all the struggle and sacrifice worthwhile. Sometimes Qui-Gon's spirit joins them, his presence no longer urgent or dramatic, but simply companionable. The crisis that brought him back from beyond the veil has long since passed, but the bonds of affection and respect that connect him to his would-be student remain strong. The galaxy you have helped create is not perfect. Young one, the Force Ghost observes on one such evening. There is still suffering, still conflict, still beings who choose darkness over light. But it is better, and that is what matters. It's not finished yet, Anakin replies, his gaze following Luke's youngest son as the boy attempts to levitate a flower with the Force. Every generation has to choose again, has to decide what kind of galaxy they want to live in. All we can do is give them the tools and wisdom to choose well. The flower rises unsteadily into the air, wavering as the child's concentration falters. But just before it falls, Leia's daughter reaches out with her own abilities, steadying her cousin's effort and allowing the bloom to float gently between them. The moment is small and simple, but it captures something essential about the world they have built. It is a place where beings help each other, where strength is used to lift others up rather than tear them down, where the next generation grows up knowing that they are loved and supported. This is the true meaning of balance in the Force. Not a static equilibrium between opposing forces, but a dynamic harmony where all beings can flourish. It is a vision that began with a single moment of intervention on Mustafar and has grown to encompass an entire galaxy. The story of Anakin Skywalker's redemption has become legend, told and retold across countless worlds. But for those who knew him, who lived through those transformative years, the real miracle was not the dramatic moments of crisis and revelation. It was the daily choice to be better, to serve others, to love without condition or reservation. Sometimes the greatest victories are indeed won not on battlefields or in throne rooms, but in the quiet moments when someone who was lost finds their way home. And sometimes when the need is great enough and the heart is pure enough, even death itself cannot prevent a master's love from reaching across the void to save an apprentice who has lost his way. Qui-Gon Jinn's decision to manifest on Mustafar changed more than one man's fate. It changed the destiny of the galaxy itself, proving that redemption is always possible, that love is stronger than hate, and that even the darkest night must eventually give way to dawn. In the end, that may be the most important lesson of all, that no one is beyond saving, no situation is beyond hope, and no act of compassion no matter how small, is ever truly wasted. The Force flows through all living beings, connecting them in ways that transcend space and time, death and life, light and dark. And in that connection, in that fundamental unity of all existence, lies the true balance that the Chosen One was always meant to bring to the galaxy, not through destruction or domination, but through understanding, compassion, and the courage to choose love over fear, hope over despair, light over darkness. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Padme, meanwhile, uses her political connections and resources to secretly fund the growing rebellion against the Empire. Her near-death experience has given her a new perspective on life and politics, and she is more determined than ever to restore freedom to the galaxy. Working with old allies like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, she helps establish supply lines and communication networks for the Resistance. Her political acumen proves invaluable in recruiting planetary governments and business leaders who are growing tired of imperial oppression. The Emperor, meanwhile, has been thrown into unprecedented chaos by the loss of his apprentice. Without Darth Vader to serve as his enforcer and public face, Palpatine must rely more heavily on the Imperial military and his network of Sith artifacts and dark side adepts. He sends inquisitors and bounty hunters throughout the galaxy to search for Anakin and his family. But the former Sith Lord has learned to shield his presence in the Force. The techniques Qui-Gon teaches him go beyond simple concealment, actually altering his Force signature so that he appears to be someone else entirely to those seeking him. More importantly, the Emperor is forced to confront a truth he has long denied. His grand plan was always dependent on having a powerful apprentice to do his bidding. Without Vader, he must either find a replacement or risk direct confrontation with his enemies. Neither option appeals to him, as finding another apprentice as powerful as Anakin may be impossible, while direct action would expose him to dangers he has avoided for decades. As the twins approach their first birthday, their Force abilities become impossible to ignore. Luke demonstrates an intuitive understanding of piloting and mechanics that rivals his father's legendary skills, while Leia shows signs of telepathic abilities and political awareness that suggest she has inherited her mother's gifts for leadership and persuasion. Unlike their counterparts in the original timeline, who grew up ignorant of their heritage, Luke and Leia are raised with full knowledge of their abilities and their family history. They learn not just the techniques of the Force, but the philosophy behind them. They understand that their powers come with great responsibility and that they must use them to serve others rather than themselves. The first major test of the growing alliance comes when Imperial forces launch a brutal crackdown on the Outer Rim territories. Entire systems are placed under martial law, with suspected rebels and Force sensitives rounded up for interrogation or execution. The brutality is unprecedented, even for the Empire, and clearly designed to draw the Jedi out of hiding. Anakin wants to respond immediately, to use his powers to protect the innocent and strike back against the Empire. But Qui-Gon counsels patience, reminding him that acting rashly will only play into Palpatine's hands. The Emperor wants you to reveal yourself, young one. He knows that you cannot stand by while others suffer, and he is counting on that compassion to make you careless. We must be smarter than that, more strategic in our approach. Instead of direct action, they begin a campaign of subtler resistance. Using the network Padme has built, they smuggle refugees off threatened worlds. They provide intelligence to local resistance groups, helping them avoid Imperial patrols and strike at vulnerable targets. Most importantly, they begin rescuing Force-sensitive children before the Inquisitors can find them. This last activity proves to be both the most dangerous and most important aspect of their mission. Each child they save is a potential future Jedi, but also a trail that could lead the Empire back to their base. They develop elaborate protocols for extraction and relocation, often requiring multiple teams working across several star systems to bring a single child to safety. The children who arrive at Yavin 4 come from every species and social background imaginable. Some are refugees from devastated worlds. Others are the children of rebels who died fighting the Empire. What they all have in common is raw potential and the trauma of living under Imperial oppression. Anakin finds working with these children to be both rewarding and challenging. Their fear and anger remind him of his own difficult childhood, but their resilience and hope inspire him to be better than he ever thought possible. He becomes not just their teacher, but a surrogate father to those who have lost their families to the Empire. One of the most significant recruits during this period is Cal Kestis, a young Padawan who survived Order 66 and has been living in hiding for years. His arrival brings valuable intelligence about Imperial operations and Inquisitor tactics, but also represents a bridge between the old Jedi Order and the new philosophy Anakin is developing. Cal struggles initially with the concept of emotional balance, having been trained in the traditional Jedi ways. But gradually, he begins to see the wisdom in Anakin's approach. Rather than suppressing his trauma from Order 66, he learns to process it constructively, using his experiences to help other survivors find their own path to healing. Another important addition to their growing community is Ezra Bridger, a street-smart teenager from Lothal, who demonstrates remarkable Force abilities despite having no formal training. His unconventional approach to the Force both challenges and enriches their understanding of how the Force can be used. Ezra's presence also brings them into contact with other rebel cells, including the crew of the starship Ghost. This connection proves invaluable in expanding their network and coordinating resistance activities across multiple sectors. As their second year on Yavin 4 begins, the community has grown from a family of 4 to a thriving settlement of nearly 200 beings. They have established workshops for building and repairing equipment, meditation gardens where students can practice their Force techniques, and even a small medical facility staffed by volunteers with healing abilities. The twins, now toddlers, are the heart of the community in many ways. Their presence reminds everyone of what they are fighting for: a future where Force-sensitive children can grow up free and unafraid. Luke's mechanical aptitude has already helped improve several of their systems, while Leia's empathic abilities have made her a natural mediator in disputes between different groups. But the peaceful development of their sanctuary cannot continue indefinitely. Imperial intelligence has begun to piece together patterns from the refugee evacuations and missing children cases. While they have not yet located the exact source of the resistance activity, they are closing in on the truth. The threat becomes immediate when an Imperial probe droid crash lands on Yavin 4, its sensors actively scanning for signs of the rebel base. The discovery forces a rapid mobilization of the entire community, with some members evacuating to safer locations, while others prepare for the possibility of attack. Anakin knows that this moment was always inevitable. The Empire will not stop hunting them, and eventually, direct confrontation will be unavoidable. But he also knows that they are not the same people who fled Mustafar 2 years ago. They have grown stronger, wiser, and more united in their purpose. The Imperial attack, when it comes, is swift and brutal. A task force, led by Grand Admiral Thrawn, arrives in the Yavin system, with orders to eliminate the rebel presence once and for all. The blue-skinned tactical genius has studied their patterns of operation and believes he has identified their weaknesses. But Thrawn has made one crucial miscalculation. He is planning to fight the scattered, desperate rebels of 2 years ago, not the disciplined, united force they have become. When his ships enter the system, they find not a hidden base of refugees, but a coordinated defense network ready for battle. The space battle that follows is unlike anything the galaxy has seen since the Clone Wars. Imperial Star Destroyers face off against a mix of rebel ships, many crewed by former Imperial officers who defected to the cause. But the real difference is the presence of multiple Force users working in coordination, their abilities allowing them to anticipate enemy movements and coordinate their own forces with unprecedented precision. Anakin leads one squadron of fighters, his piloting skills as legendary as ever, but now enhanced by his balanced understanding of the Force. Luke, despite his young age, serves as his co-pilot, his emerging abilities providing early warning of dangers that even his father might miss. Leia remains on the ground, but her role is equally important. Her growing telepathic abilities allow her to maintain communication between different parts of the defense network, coordinating ground-based weapons with the space battle above. The battle reaches its climax when Thrawn realizes that his conventional tactics are inadequate against Force-enhanced opponents. In desperation, he orders his ships to begin bombarding the moon itself, hoping to destroy the rebel base even if it costs him the chance to capture valuable intelligence. This escalation triggers a response that Thrawn could never have anticipated. Anakin, sensing the threat to his family and community, taps into the full extent of his Force abilities for the first time since his redemption. But instead of drawing on anger and hatred as he did as Darth Vader, he channels his love for his family and his determination to protect the innocent. The result is a display of Force mastery that legends will be built upon. Anakin literally reaches out through space to disable the Imperial ships, overloading their weapon systems and causing critical malfunctions throughout their fleets. It is a demonstration of power that rivals anything the Emperor himself could accomplish, but used in service of protection rather than destruction. Faced with the impossible, Thrawn makes a tactical retreat, withdrawing his surviving ships while transmitting detailed reports to the Emperor about what he witnessed. The rebel victory at Yavin 4 sends shockwaves throughout the galaxy, proving that the Empire is not invincible and inspiring other resistance movements to become more active. But victory comes at a cost. The battle has revealed their location to the Empire and demonstrated the extent of Anakin's abilities to Palpatine. They can no longer remain hidden, and the Emperor will undoubtedly respond with even greater force. More importantly, the use of such extensive Force abilities has attracted the attention of other powers in the galaxy. Ancient beings who have watched from the shadows for millennia suddenly take notice of the growing concentration of Force users around the Skywalker family. Among these are the Force priestesses, ethereal beings who exist in the realm between life and death. They have been watching Anakin's journey with great interest, seeing in him the potential for a new understanding of the Force that transcends the traditional conflicts between light and dark. Through Qui-Gon, they send a message. The time has come for Anakin to face his ultimate test. Not a battle against external enemies, but a confrontation with the deepest truths about himself and his destiny. Only by completing this trial can he fully embrace his role as the Chosen One and prepare for the final confrontation with Palpatine. The trial takes place in the depths of the ancient Massassi temple, in chambers that have been sealed for thousands of years. As Anakin descends into the darkness, guided by Qui-Gon's spirit and watched over by the Force priestesses, he must confront not just his past failures, but all the potential paths his life could have taken. He sees versions of himself where he never left Tatooine, living and dying as a slave. He experiences timelines where he became a Sith Lord and conquered the galaxy through fear. Most challenging of all, he witnesses possibilities where he became the perfect Jedi, suppressing all emotion and attachment in service to an ideal that ultimately served no one. Each vision teaches him something about the nature of choice and destiny. He learns that his fall to the dark side was not inevitable, but neither was his redemption. Every moment of his life has been shaped by decisions, both his own and those of others. The key to true wisdom is understanding that while the past cannot be changed, the future remains unwritten. When he emerges from the trial, Anakin is transformed once again, not in the dramatic way of his fall and redemption, but in a subtle shift that makes him more fully himself than he has ever been. He has integrated all aspects of his personality and experiences, accepting both his capacity for great good and great evil while choosing to dedicate himself to the former. This transformation has practical effects as well. His Force abilities, already formidable, become more refined and controlled. He can now access techniques from both light and dark traditions without being corrupted by either, drawing on the full spectrum of the Force while remaining centered in wisdom and compassion. The timing proves crucial because Palpatine has finally decided to act personally. Frustrated by the failure of his servants and increasingly concerned about the growing rebel alliance, the Emperor begins gathering his most powerful Sith artifacts and dark side adepts for a final assault on the rebel base. But Palpatine's plans go beyond simply destroying the rebels. He intends to capture Luke and Leia, believing that if he cannot reclaim Anakin, he can at least corrupt the next generation of Skywalkers. The twins' incredible potential, combined with their young age, makes them ideal candidates for Sith training. The Emperor's approach is detected well in advance by the rebels' intelligence network, giving them time to prepare their defenses and evacuate non-combatants. But Anakin knows that this time there will be no retreat. The confrontation with his former master has been inevitable since the moment Qui-Gon saved him on Mustafar. As the Imperial fleet approaches Yavin 4, now led by Palpatine himself aboard his personal flagship, Anakin makes a decision that surprises everyone. Rather than wait for the attack, he will go to the Emperor. The final duel will not take place on Yavin 4, where innocent lives might be endangered, but in the cold vacuum of space, where only the two Sith Lords need risk themselves. Padme objects strenuously to this plan, as do Obi-Wan and many others in the rebel leadership. They argue that confronting Palpatine alone is suicide, that the Emperor's power has grown too great over the decades to face without overwhelming support. But Anakin knows something they do not. This battle is not really about military victory or defeat. It is about completing the transformation that began on Mustafar, about proving to himself and the galaxy that redemption is possible even from the deepest darkness. More than that, it is about breaking the cycle of master and apprentice that has driven the Sith for millennia. The confrontation takes place aboard Palpatine's flagship, in the Emperor's throne room, where so many crucial decisions about the galaxy's future have been made. The chamber is a monument to Sith philosophy, decorated with artifacts of the dark side and designed to amplify the Emperor's connection to the Force. When Anakin arrives, he finds Palpatine waiting for him with apparent calm. But the Emperor's yellow eyes burn with decades of accumulated rage and frustration. The plan that was meant to give him the most powerful apprentice in galactic history has instead created his most dangerous enemy. So, my former apprentice returns to me at last. I must admit, I did not foresee your pathetic attempt at redemption. But no matter. You will kneel before your master once more, or you will die. Anakin ignites his lightsaber, but his posture is not aggressive. Instead, he stands in a defensive position, ready to protect himself, but not eager to attack. I am not your apprentice, Palpatine. I never truly was. You created a slave and called him Darth Vader, but that was never who I am. The Emperor's response is swift and brutal. Crimson lightning erupts from his fingertips, more powerful than anything he has ever unleashed before. The energy is not just meant to cause pain, but to corrupt, to drag its target back into the darkness through sheer, overwhelming malevolence. But the lightning dissipates harmlessly around Anakin, absorbed and redirected by his balanced understanding of the Force. He has learned to use techniques from both light and dark traditions, taking the Sith ability to manipulate Force lightning and combining it with Jedi principles of defense and protection. Impossible. No Jedi has ever resisted the full power of a Sith master. I am not a Jedi, Palpatine, and you are not my master. I am something new, something your ancient philosophies cannot understand or defeat. The duel that follows is unlike any conflict in galactic history. It is not simply a battle between light and dark, but a confrontation between two entirely different understandings of what the Force represents. Palpatine fights with all the accumulated power and knowledge of the Sith, drawing on techniques that date back thousands of years. His attacks are relentless, powered by his absolute certainty in his own superiority. Anakin, by contrast, fights with balance and purpose. Every move serves a defensive function, protecting not just himself, but the innocent lives that depend on the outcome of this battle. He uses Force techniques that combine elements from multiple traditions, creating combinations that have never been seen before. As the battle progresses, it becomes clear that despite his power, Palpatine is at a disadvantage. His strength comes from domination and control, but Anakin refuses to be dominated. Every attack is turned aside, every manipulation fails to take hold. For the first time in decades, the Emperor faces an opponent who is truly his equal. More than that, Anakin represents everything Palpatine fears most. Proof that his philosophy is wrong. The Emperor has built his entire identity on the belief that power comes through passion, that the strong must dominate the weak, that attachment leads inevitably to corruption. Anakin's existence as a redeemed Sith Lord challenges every one of these assumptions. The turning point comes when Palpatine, desperate to gain an advantage, attempts to strike at Anakin through his connection to Luke and Leia. Using the Force, he tries to attack the children on Yavin 4, hoping to drive their father into the rage that will make him vulnerable, but the attack fails completely. The twins are protected not just by the distance between them and the Emperor, but by the network of Force users that surrounds them. Their extended family of rebels, former Jedi, and Force-sensitive students forms a shield that no amount of Sith power can penetrate. More importantly, Anakin's response to the attack on his children is not rage, but an even deeper commitment to their protection. Instead of lashing out in anger, he reaches out with love, his Force presence wrapping around his family across the light years that separate them. This display of controlled power breaks something fundamental in Palpatine's understanding of the Force. For the first time in his life, the Emperor experiences doubt. His carefully constructed worldview, built on the certainty that might makes right and that the dark side is the path to ultimate power, crumbles in the face of Anakin's balanced strength. The doubt creates an opening that Anakin does not hesitate to exploit, but rather than striking to kill, he reaches out through the Force to touch Palpatine's mind, showing him the same visions that Qui-Gon once shared. The Emperor sees the full scope of his own actions, the suffering he has caused, the potential for good that his choices have destroyed. The revelation is too much for Palpatine's mind to handle. A lifetime of accumulated guilt and repressed conscience suddenly floods back, overwhelming his carefully constructed defenses. The Emperor's scream echoes through the Force itself, felt by sensitive beings across the galaxy as the dark side loses one of its most powerful champions. When Palpatine falls, it is not to a lightsaber strike or Force lightning, but to the weight of his own actions finally catching up with him. His body simply cannot contain the conflict between what he has become and what he once might have been. The Emperor dies not as a martyr to his cause, but as a broken man finally forced to confront the truth about himself. The death of Palpatine sends shockwaves through both the Force and the physical galaxy. The Emperor's network of control, built on fear and maintained through constant vigilance, begins to collapse immediately. Imperial governors and admirals find themselves cut off from central authority, forced to make their own decisions about whether to continue fighting or seek accommodation with the rebels. On Yavin 4, the rebels feel the shift immediately. The oppressive weight that has hung over the galaxy for years suddenly lifts, replaced by a sense of possibility and hope that many have never experienced. Children who have known only life under Imperial rule suddenly sense that things can be different. The immediate aftermath of the Emperor's death is chaotic. Various Imperial factions attempt to seize control, while others simply try to maintain order in their local regions. The Rebel Alliance, now grown into a significant political force, works to establish legitimate government in the areas they control, while avoiding the mistakes that led to the Republic's downfall. Anakin returns to Yavin 4 to find his family and community celebrating, but also preparing for the work of rebuilding that lies ahead. The destruction of the Empire will not automatically create a just galaxy, and there are still many who subscribe to Palpatine's philosophy of rule through fear and strength. Over the following months, a new galactic government begins to take shape. Unlike the Old Republic, which was dominated by wealthy core worlds and corrupt senators, this new system is built from the ground up by beings who have experienced oppression and are determined to prevent its return. Padme plays a crucial role in these developments, her political experience and moral authority making her a natural choice for leadership. But she is careful to avoid the concentration of power that allowed Palpatine to seize control, instead working to create checks and balances that will prevent any one individual from gaining too much influence. The new Jedi Order that emerges is likewise different from its predecessor. Rather than a hierarchical organization focused on maintaining the status quo, it becomes a network of teachers and healers dedicated to helping Force-sensitive individuals find their own path. The rigid rules that once governed Jedi behavior are replaced by principles of balance, compassion, and service to the common good. Anakin takes a central role in developing this new approach, but he is careful not to become the sole authority figure. Instead, he works with other survivors of the Old Order, reformed Sith, and entirely new Force traditions to create something that serves the needs of a diverse galaxy. Luke and Leia, now approaching their teenage years, become symbols of this new approach. They are powerful in the Force, but they are also grounded in family, friendship, and community in ways that the old Jedi never understood. Their abilities develop not in isolation, but in connection with others, making them stronger and more balanced than their predecessors. The twins also represent hope for the future in a very practical sense. As they grow older and begin taking on more responsibilities, they demonstrate that it is possible to be both powerful and humble, both passionate and wise. They show that the Force can serve life and growth rather than domination and control. As the new galactic civilization takes shape, it becomes clear that the changes go far deeper than mere political reorganization. The very nature of how beings relate to each other and to the Force has been transformed by the events that began on Mustafar years earlier. Force-sensitive individuals who once would have been recruited by the Jedi or hunted by the Sith instead find communities where they can develop their abilities while remaining connected to their families and cultures. The rigid distinction between Force users and ordinary beings begins to blur as more people discover that they have at least some connection to the universal energy field. This democratization of Force knowledge creates challenges as well as opportunities. Not everyone who can touch the Force has the wisdom to use it responsibly. And there are inevitably those who attempt to use their abilities for personal gain or to harm others. But the new network of teachers and mentors is better equipped to identify and address these problems than the old Jedi Order ever was. The galaxy that emerges from this transformation is not perfect. There are still conflicts between different species and cultures. Economic inequality persists in many regions, and the scars left by decades of imperial rule take time to heal. But there is something different in the air, a sense of possibility and hope that had been absent for far too long. Perhaps most importantly, there is a new understanding of what it means to be powerful. The old Sith philosophy that might makes right has been thoroughly discredited, replaced by the recognition that true strength comes from connection, compassion, and the willingness to serve something greater than oneself. Anakin Skywalker, once the most feared enforcer of imperial tyranny, has become a symbol of redemption and hope. His journey from slave to Jedi to Sith Lord to something entirely new demonstrates that no one is beyond saving, that even the darkest fall can be followed by the brightest redemption. But perhaps the most important lesson of his story is that redemption is not a destination, but a journey. Not a single moment of transformation, but a daily choice to serve the light, despite the constant temptation of the dark. Every day, Anakin must choose to be the man his family needs him to be, the teacher his students deserve, the symbol of hope that the galaxy requires. Years pass, and the Skywalker family ages gracefully into their roles as leaders and teachers. Luke becomes a master pilot and mechanic. His natural talents, enhanced by his Force abilities and his deep understanding of how technology and the Force can work together. Leia develops into a gifted diplomat and leader, her empathic abilities making her uniquely qualified to bridge differences between various species and cultures. Padmé continues her political work, but she also becomes a teacher in her own right, helping others understand how to build just and sustainable governments. Her experiences under both the Republic and the Empire have given her unique insights into the strengths and weaknesses of different political systems. Obi-Wan, no longer burdened by the guilt of his failure to save Anakin, finds new purpose in training the next generation of balanced Force users. His wisdom and experience, combined with his humility about the mistakes of the past, make him an invaluable resource for those struggling to find their own path. Even Qui-Gon continues to play a role, though his manifestations become less frequent as the immediate crisis passes. His teachings about balance and the living Force become foundational principles for the New Order, influencing how Force-sensitive beings across the galaxy understand their abilities and responsibilities. The galaxy that emerges from these changes is not the one anyone expected, but it is perhaps the one that was always meant to be. The ancient prophecy about the Chosen One bringing balance to the Force has been fulfilled, but not through the destruction of the Sith or the triumph of the Jedi. Instead, balance has been achieved through understanding, through the recognition that light and dark are not enemies to be defeated, but aspects of a greater whole to be integrated and harmonized. In a quiet moment on Yavin 4, as twin suns set over the ancient temples, Anakin Skywalker sits with his family, watching his children play in the gathering dusk. The boy who was born a slave and nearly became a monster has instead become exactly what the Force intended: a bridge between different ways of understanding power, a teacher of balance, a guardian of hope. The scars of his past will never fully fade, and the memories of what he did as Darth Vader will always be with him. But these experiences, painful as they are, have made him uniquely qualified to help others who struggle with similar darkness within themselves. His redemption is not complete because redemption is never complete, but his journey continues, each day bringing new opportunities to choose light over darkness, connection over isolation, love over fear. Sometimes the greatest victories are not won on battlefields or in throne rooms, but in the quiet moments when someone who was lost finds their way home. Qui-Gon Jinn's decision to intervene on Mustafar changed more than one man's fate. It changed the destiny of the galaxy itself, proving that it is never too late to make a different choice, never too late to find balance, never too late to come home to the light. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with infinite possibilities, where even the darkest story can find redemption and hope. In this tale, The intervention of a wise master at the crucial moment transforms tragedy into triumph, despair into hope, and the fall of the chosen one into the rise of something even greater. A balanced understanding of what it truly means to serve the Force and protect all life in the galaxy. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.